Your brother earned it, Dad told me. They handed him the house, the money, the business. A month later, Mom messaged, "Mortgages due." I answered, "Talk to your successor." Complete story with updates. They told me my brother deserved everything. The multi-million-dollar company, the family home, every single dime. Can you imagine the sting of that betrayal? Just a month later, my mom texted, "Mortgages due." And in that moment, I knew it was time for them to finally face the consequences. Hey everyone, I'm Megan. I'm 32, and I'm here to tell you a story that's probably going to make your jaw drop. It's a story about family, betrayal, and what happens when you finally decide to stand up for yourself. If you've ever felt overlooked or undervalued, this one's for you. Before we dive deeper, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. Your support means the world as I share this wild ride. So about 3 years ago, my parents made a decision that completely blew up my world. They handed over our multi-million-dollar construction company, the one I'd poured my blood, sweat, and tears into for 15 years, along with our family home and all their investment accounts, to my younger brother, Ryan. His big qualification? He'd partied his way through his 20s while I was busy helping build our empire. When my dad looked me in the eye and told me I was getting absolutely nothing, his exact words still echo in my head. "Your brother deserves it." And now they're drowning in debt. And believe me, the irony isn't lost on me. Growing up in our sprawling colonial house, just outside Boston, I always felt like I was living in Ryan's shadow. Our family legacy started back in 1965 when my grandfather, William Patterson, launched Patterson Construction from his garage. He was a force of nature, building that business from nothing but determination and a beat-up pickup truck. My dad, Thomas, took the reins in the early 90s, and he turned it into a regional powerhouse, stretching across all of New England. Then Ryan came along. I was 7. I still remember my dad's face in the hospital waiting room, practically glowing when the nurse announced, "It's a boy." He proudly declared, "Finally, a Patterson to carry on the family name." You'd think his first child, had just evaporated. That moment, right there, set the tone for the next 25 years of our family dynamics. The difference in how we were treated was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but it was absolutely unmistakable. Let me give you an example. For Ryan's 5th birthday, he got a custom playhouse, built by our company's crew, right there in our backyard. For my 12th birthday, that very same year, a cake and a bookstore gift card. Yeah, you heard that right. And when I brought home straight A's, my mom would give a dismissive, "That's nice, honey," before immediately turning her attention to Ryan's C in math, praising him for simply trying. My mother, Nancy, wasn't outwardly biased, no, but she absolutely enabled my dad's favoritism. She was the family peacekeeper, always trying to soothe the sting with a little extra attention when Dad wasn't around. "Your father just has traditional values," she'd whisper to me after particularly painful moments of injustice. "He doesn't mean anything by it." Oh, but he did. By the time high school rolled around, I had a strategy. Excellence. If I couldn't earn their love just by being me, then maybe achievement would finally do the trick. I joined every business club imaginable, became president of the Future Business Leaders of America, and graduated as salutatorian. Ryan? He barely scraped by with a C average, spending more time in detention than doing anything productive. I'll never forget overhearing my dad talking to Ryan after he'd been caught drinking at a school dance. "Boys will be boys," Dad chuckled. "Just don't get caught next time." This was 3 months after I'd been grounded for a week for missing curfew by 15 minutes because of study group. The double standard was infuriating. When it came time for college, I chose business management with a construction focus. Not because it was my passion, but because I desperately hoped it would finally earn my father's respect. I wanted to prove I was serious about the family business. Ryan, though, he bounced through 3 different majors before landing on communications because, well, it was easy. The summer before my senior year of college, I interned at Patterson Construction. I was there early, I stayed late, soaking up every single detail about estimating, project management, client relations, you name it. My dad, he barely noticed me. He had me filing paperwork, while Ryan, who was still just a sophomore, was being invited to client meetings and job sites. Ryan needs to learn the business from the ground up, my dad would explain. The irony of my brother attending executive meetings while I organized the supply closet was completely lost on him. Seriously, despite all of that, I truly loved our family business. I saw its massive potential, and I genuinely wanted to be a part of its future. Every summer, every holiday break, I worked different positions throughout the company. I knew every employee by name, from accounting to the construction crews. I understood their concerns, their processes, their ideas for improvement. For Christmas my senior year, I put together a detailed business plan for expanding Patterson Construction into green building practices. I'd spent months researching trends, tax incentives, potential new clients. Dad just glanced at the cover, said, "We'll see," and set it aside. Later that night, he spent 2 hours teaching Ryan how to read blueprints. Even though Ryan showed absolutely no interest or aptitude, my mom, bless her heart, tried to comfort me. "Your father just connects better with Ryan," she said, patting my hand. "He doesn't know how to relate to a daughter in business." I pointed out that several major construction companies in our area were run by women. She just shrugged and changed the subject. It was infuriating. By the time I graduated, I'd accepted that I'd never be the favorite, but I was determined to prove my worth through results. I truly believed action spoke louder than words, and that eventually, my contributions would be undeniable. Looking back now, the naivete. No amount of excellence can ever overcome deeply entrenched favoritism, especially when it's mixed with outdated gender expectations. But here's the thing, I never gave up. Maybe that was my greatest strength, or maybe it was my biggest weakness. I simply refused to walk away from a family and a business that I loved, even when every single sign screamed that my place in both would always be secondary to my brother's. I worked 3 part-time jobs, all through college, to pay my way. Ryan? Oh, he got the full bank of mom and dad experience. Luxury apartment, a new car every 2 years, tuition, rent, meal plan, and a monthly allowance that most graduates only dream of. When I asked why they wouldn't help me, my dad actually said, "You need to learn the value of hard work." As if Ryan was out there digging ditches. I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in business administration and construction management. Ryan? He barely scraped by with a 2.3 GPA in communications after 5.5 years. At my graduation dinner, Dad raised a toast to Megan, who always does things by the book. At Ryan's graduation 6 months later, he openly wept to my son, who will carry the Patterson name into the future of our business. You just can't make this stuff up. So, I officially joined Patterson Construction after graduation, brimming with qualifications. Where do they put me? An entry-level estimating position. My starting salary was actually lower than new hires with less education. My dad's explanation? You need to understand every aspect of the business from the ground up. Fast forward 3 weeks later, and Ryan was installed as the newly created Vice President of Client Relations, complete with a corner office and a company car. You could just feel the fairness, right? In my first year, I dug deep and identified nearly $400,000 in potential savings by streamlining our material ordering. I built a comprehensive spreadsheet, tracking historical pricing from all our suppliers, finding patterns that allowed us to negotiate seriously better rates. When I presented my findings in a management meeting, Dad simply nodded and said, "Interesting," before quickly moving on to Ryan's presentation about hosting a company golf tournament. Can you believe it? Despite the constant, soul-crushing disappointment, I kept excelling. I became the go-to person for problem-solving among the project managers. Material shipments delayed? I found alternatives. Subcontractors no-show? I had backups ready. I built relationships with everyone, from the receptionist to the lead foreman on our biggest projects. There's one project that really sticks with me. A medical office complex with a super tight deadline and hefty penalties for late completion. 2 months in, our project manager unexpectedly quit. Ryan was supposed to step in, but naturally, he was on a 3-week European vacation with his friends. My dad was in a full-blown panic until I volunteered to take over. I worked 14-hour days, 6 weeks straight. I renegotiated with every subcontractor, completely reorganized the construction schedule, to optimize crew time and personally oversaw every critical phase. We finished the building 2 days ahead of schedule and under budget. The client was so thrilled, they immediately signed us for their next expansion. At the completion ceremony, I stood in the background watching Dad and Ryan, who had conveniently returned just in time, cut the ribbon. The client actually sought me out, shook my hand, and said, "This wouldn't have happened without you." Dad overheard, looked momentarily uncomfortable, then clapped Ryan on the shoulder and proudly declared, "The Patterson men know how to deliver." I swear. So, while I was living modestly in a tiny one-bedroom apartment, brown bagging my lunch, and driving a beat-up 10-year-old Honda, Ryan was buying a waterfront condo with his executive compensation package. He was expensing client lunches and cruising around in a company-leased BMW. I was meticulously building my savings account while Ryan was racking up credit card debt that my parents would just pay off. It was absolutely infuriating to witness. Despite all this, the company continued to grow, largely thanks to the new systems and client relationships I developed. I even created a whole new division focused on sustainable construction, which brought in prestigious clients and higher profit margins, building our reputation as an innovative firm. My dad, he happily took all the credit in industry publications, even though he'd initially dismissed my proposal outright. Ryan's contributions, let's just say, were less tangible. He was great at charity galas and golf tournaments. He charmed the wives of clients at holiday parties. He looked good in company marketing materials. But when he actually managed projects, they almost always ran over budget and behind schedule, requiring other managers, usually me, to step in and salvage them. Then, in my 5th year, we faced a major crisis. A huge commercial project was on the brink of collapse because Ryan had approved design changes without bothering to calculate the structural implications. The client was threatening legal action, and our reputation was on the line. And Ryan? He was conveniently sick the week this all came to light. So for 2 weeks, I worked tirelessly, negotiating with architects, engineers, and the client to find a solution. I secured additional financing, brought in specialized subcontractors, and personally supervised the remediation. The project was saved, thank goodness, even if the profit was reduced. When the dust settled, my dad called me into his office. For a fleeting moment, I actually thought recognition was finally coming. "You've done good work cleaning up the situation," he said. "But in the future, consult with me before making financial commitments of this magnitude. Ryan made a mistake, but he's learning. We need to support him while he grows into his role." I just sat there, stunned into absolute silence. 10 years of dedication, and I was still being treated as subordinate to my brother, who couldn't even be bothered to show up when things got difficult. That night, for the very first time, I seriously considered leaving the company. But I'd invested so much of myself into Patterson Construction that walking away felt like admitting defeat. Besides, where would I go? This was the family business. My business, too. Or so I thought. Then came the evening that changed everything. It started normally enough. Mom invited Ryan and me to Sunday dinner, saying Dad had a big announcement. I figure it was about the new office building we were planning, or maybe the commercial real estate expansion I'd been researching. I showed up 15 minutes early, as usual, with a bottle of Dad's favorite scotch. The house, the one I grew up in, looked exactly the same, an immaculately maintained 4-bedroom colonial, with a Patterson Construction sign proudly displayed. 25 years of success had allowed my parents to add a sunroom, a pool, beautiful landscaping. It was still home to me. Ryan arrived 20 minutes late, of course, no apology necessary. Mom fussed over him like he'd just returned from a war zone, not a 5-minute drive from his condo. Dad beamed when Ryan casually mentioned he'd put a deposit down on a new boat. No one, not a single soul, asked about the contract I'd just successfully negotiated, which would secure work for the company for the next 3 years. It was business as usual, which for me meant being invisible. During dinner, Dad cleared his throat and raised his glass. "I've been thinking about the future of Patterson Construction," he began. "I'm not getting any younger. It's time to plan for succession." My heart actually quickened. This was it. This was the moment I'd been working toward, the recognition for 15 years of dedication. Surely he'd see my commitment, my contributions. Your mother and I have decided it's time to start stepping back from day-to-day operations, he continued. We want to travel, enjoy our golden years, and watch the business continue to thrive under new leadership. I sat up even straighter, mentally running through the transition plan I'd been quietly developing for years. Therefore, Dad said, turning directly to Ryan, we've decided to transfer ownership of Patterson Construction to Ryan, effective immediately. The room started to spin. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. Additionally, Dad went on, as if he hadn't just shattered my entire world into a million pieces, we'll be transferring the house and our investment accounts to Ryan as well. He'll need these assets to secure the company's future growth. Just like that. Everything. What about Megan? Mom asked, her voice barely a whisper. It was the first hint that maybe this hadn't been a completely unanimous decision. Dad barely even glanced my way. We're offering Megan a generous severance package in recognition of her years with the company. 3-month salary and her company car. That's it. That was it. I finally found my voice, though it was barely a whisper. 15 years of my life, and I get 3 months' pay while Ryan gets everything. My dad's reply was firm, leaving no room for argument. Your brother deserves it. He's a Patterson man. The company should stay with the family name. I could feel the rage bubbling up. I'm a Patterson, too, I cried, my voice shaking. Until you marry, Dad replied dismissively. Besides, Ryan has a vision for the company's future. Ryan actually smirked across the table. Don't worry, sis, he drawled. I might find a place for you in the new organization. Maybe in HR or something. HR. The disrespect was unbelievable. I looked at my mom, desperate for support, for someone to stand up for me. But she just stared at her plate. We just want what's best for the company, she murmured. What's best for the company? I stood up so fast my chair crashed backward. Ryan doesn't know the first thing about running this business. He can't read a balance sheet. He's never completed a project on time. Half the crews refuse to work with him because he doesn't know what he's talking about. That's enough. Dad slammed his hand on the table. This decision is final. The paperwork has already been prepared. My eyes burned with unshed tears. Did you ever intend to include me in the company's future? I asked, my voice breaking. Dad's expression softened, just slightly. Megan, you're smart. You'll land on your feet. But Patterson Construction needs a Patterson at the helm. It's tradition. A male Patterson, you mean? I said, the bitterness raw in my throat. Don't make this about gender, Ryan interjected, still smirking. It's about who Dad trusts to carry on his legacy. I looked around the table at my family. My dad, resolute in his decision. My mom, unwilling to challenge him. Ryan, barely containing his triumph. 32 years of trying to prove myself, of loving people who would never value me equally, all crashed down on me in that instant. Congratulations on your retirement, I said coldly to my parents. And congratulations on your inheritance, I added to Ryan. I hope you all get exactly what you deserve. And with that, I walked out without looking back, ignoring my mother's frantic calls. In my car, the tears finally came. Not just for the lost inheritance, but for the recognition I'd never receive, for the wasted years I'd spent trying to earn a love that should have been unconditional. The very next morning, I submitted my resignation, effective immediately. My dad called, not to apologize, of course, but to remind me about the non-compete clause in my employment contract. You can't work for any competitor within 100 miles for 2 years, he said, as if that was his biggest concern. I wouldn't dream of it, I replied, and hung up. I want to clear out my office on a Sunday when no one would be there. 15 years of my life, my hard work, fit into 2 cardboard boxes. As I took one last look at the company I had helped build, I made myself a solemn promise. I would never again allow my worth to be determined by someone else's inability to see it. That first month after leaving Patterson Construction was brutal. I rented a furnished apartment in Chicago, as far from Boston as I could reasonably go while still staying in the construction industry. Every morning, I woke up questioning everything. Every night, I had to remind myself that staying would have slowly, surely destroyed my soul. I gave myself 2 weeks to grieve. I cried. I screamed into pillows. I wrote scathing letters to my family that, thankfully, I never sent. Then I got to work. I was rebuilding my life from scratch. My severance package barely covered my first month's rent and security deposit. I had to dip into my savings to minimally furnish my new place and set up my new business, Patterson Consulting. Keeping that name? That was a small, satisfying act of defiance. I built a website, got business cards, created a LinkedIn profile, all emphasizing my extensive experience without mentioning it was a family business. Cold calls and networking events became my daily grind. I introduced myself to literally everyone in the Chicago construction industry, from subcontractors to developers. Most doors, honestly, remained firmly closed. Construction consulting from an unknown woman in a male-dominated industry wasn't an easy sell, not by a long shot. My first client came through pure desperation. Theirs, not mine. A mid-sized developer had fired their project manager mid-construction and needed immediate help. The project was 3 months behind schedule and significantly over budget. I offered to work for a reduced fee, with a bonus structure tied to getting them back on track. For 6 weeks, I worked from 6 a.m. until midnight every single day. I renegotiated with subcontractors, completely reorganized the schedule, and pinpointed costly mistakes in the original plans. By the end, we'd cut the delays in half and found enough savings to offset the previous overruns. The developer was so thrilled, they refer me to 2 colleagues. Suddenly, I had a small client base and glowing references. I found my niche, the construction consultant you call when things go sideways. I marketed myself as a problem solver, not a direct competitor to established firms. About 4 months into my new venture, I got a call from Martin Chin, Patterson Construction's former head estimator. I quit, he announced without preamble. Ryan fired Dolores and Jim last week. Said they were too expensive after 30 years with the company. I couldn't stay after that. Martin filled me in on all the changes Ryan had implemented. Experienced project managers replaced with his fraternity brothers, reliable subcontractors dropped for cheaper alternatives, and the sustainable construction division I'd built dismantled because Ryan found the certification requirements too complicated. The place is falling apart, Martin concluded. Your father is trying to keep his hands off, but he looks physically ill every time he visits the office. I thank Martin for the information, but I held my boundary. Their business was no longer my concern. Still, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of professional vindication. My skills and knowledge had been valuable, whether my family recognized it or not. As my first year in Chicago progressed, so did my business. I hired 2 assistants and moved into a small but professional office space. I developed a reputation for honesty and results. Unlike my father's hierarchical style, I built collaborative relationships with clients, explaining my recommendations clearly and involving them in decisions. This approach resonated particularly well with female developers and project owners, a growing demographic in the industry. By my 15th month, I had a waiting list of clients and was thinking about expanding my team. Meanwhile, updates from former colleagues painted an increasingly dire picture of Patterson Construction. Ryan was underbidding competitors on large contracts, not even realizing they'd operate at a loss. Quality issues were rampant. 2 major clients had filed lawsuits over delays and defects. I tried to maintain professional distance, but I couldn't shake a twinge of sadness. Patterson Construction was my grandfather's legacy. Hundreds of families depended on that company. Ryan's mismanagement wasn't just hurting our family, it was affecting loyal employees. Then one evening, an email arrived from Barbara, my parents' neighbor of 20 years. She wrote that there were rumors about my parents facing financial difficulties. Their country club membership had lapsed. Their annual vacation canceled. The company trucks no longer had the prominent Patterson logo. They were just plain white, minimally identified. I almost called my mother that night, but I stopped myself. They had made their choice. They had entrusted everything to Ryan, believing his DNA and gender made him more worthy than my years of demonstrated competence. Whatever consequences came from that decision were theirs to bear. Instead, I channeled my energy into growing my business. I expanded into preventative consulting, helping developers avoid the costly mistakes I'd seen so often. I developed a training program for new project managers based on real-world experience. I hired 3 more consultants, all women with extensive construction experience who had faced similar barriers in traditional companies. By the end of my second year in Chicago, Patterson Consulting was a respected name in the Midwest construction industry. I had proven to myself that my success at Patterson Construction wasn't a fluke or nepotism. If anything, I'd succeeded despite the obstacles they put in my path. I bought a small, elegant condo in a historic building, my first real home that was truly mine. As I unpacked, I found a photo of my grandfather standing proudly in front of his first Patterson Construction truck. His expression showed the same pride and determination I now felt. In that moment, I realized I was carrying on his true legacy, not through a name on a building, but through the values of hard work, integrity, and resilience he embodied. That night, I slept better than I had in years, finally at peace. Little did I know, the very next morning would bring my past crashing back into my carefully reconstructed life. Ryan's approach to running Patterson Construction? Honestly, it was like watching a toddler with a stack of blocks, knocking down decades of established structures purely for the joy of destruction, with absolutely no plan for rebuilding. Within just 6 months of him being in charge, he'd undone everything. His first brilliant move was firing our long-standing accounting firm, replacing them with his college roommate's brother, who had just gotten his CPA license. This new guy, eager to please but totally clueless about construction specifics, completely failed to track job costs. By tax season, the books were such a disaster that they had to hire a forensic accountant at an insane cost. His next stroke of genius? Restructuring the management team. He eliminated 3 project managers who had been with us for over 20 years, claiming they were resistant to fresh ideas. In their place, he hired 4 of his fraternity brothers, none with any actual construction experience. He created fancy new executive titles for them, like Chief Innovation Officer and Director of Brand Experience, complete with 6-figure salaries and company cars. The Patterson Construction office, once a model of efficiency, turned into a frat house. Seriously, Ryan installed a ping-pong table and a kegerator in the conference room, convinced it would boost creativity. Monday morning staff meetings were replaced with vision sessions where Ryan would ramble about company expansion while his clueless executives nodded along enthusiastically. Meanwhile, actual construction projects floundered without any real oversight. The green building division, the one I'd established that accounted for nearly 30% of our revenue, was dismantled because Ryan found the certification requirements too complicated. Predictably, our long-standing clients who valued sustainable options immediately took their business elsewhere. Ryan's strategy for winning new business was equally disastrous. He slashed bid prices to undercut competitors without understanding the actual costs. Patterson Construction started securing contracts that were guaranteed to operate at a loss before the first shovel even hit dirt. When estimators tried to explain this, Ryan accused them of being negative and not seeing the big picture of growing market share. The company fleet, once meticulously maintained, fell into disrepair as Ryan diverted the maintenance budget to lease a new Porsche, his client development vehicle. Equipment started breaking down on job sites, causing delays that triggered penalty clauses in contracts. Subcontractors, who had worked with us for generations, found themselves waiting 90 days for payment instead of the standard 30. Many refused to take on new Patterson projects, forcing Ryan to hire unknown subcontractors whose work quality was, to put mildly, inconsistent. By the 9-month mark, our cash reserves, built up over decades of careful management, were completely depleted. Ryan then started using the company's line of credit to cover regular operating expenses, a cardinal sin in construction management. The interest payments alone were eating up thousands each month. My parents, who had planned to enjoy a comfortable retirement, found themselves increasingly dragged back into the business. Dad would stop by job sites, wincing at obvious quality issues, but still hesitant to undermine his son. Mom started handling accounts payable again because vendors were calling the house, demanding payment. Yet, they still made excuses for Ryan. He's still learning, Dad would say. The market is challenging right now, Mom would explain. The company's reputation, built over 3 generations, eroded at lightning speed. General contractors who once insisted on Patterson were looking elsewhere. Our bonding capacity, crucial for larger projects, was downgraded due to financial instability, drastically limiting what we could bid on. 12 months into Ryan's leadership, the first lawsuit arrived. A commercial client sued for substantial damages after structural issues appeared in a recently completed office building. The investigation revealed Ryan had approved substituting lower-grade materials to save costs. Our insurance carrier initially denied the claim, citing willful negligence. A second lawsuit followed over water damage in an apartment complex we'd built, traced to improperly installed flashing, a basic construction element any experienced project manager would verify. The settlement depleted what little cash reserves remained. Around the 15-month mark, Ryan made his most catastrophic decision. Without consulting any financial advisors, he used the company's remaining borrowing capacity to buy an adjacent property for a planned headquarters expansion. The timing was awful. The commercial real estate market was at its peak, and he paid way above market value. Within 6 months, property values plummeted, leaving the company upside down on the loan. And his personal spending? That continued unabated. He bought a boat, then a vacation property in Florida. He took lavish business development trips to Las Vegas and the Caribbean. Company credit cards were maxed out at high-end restaurants and luxury hotels. With the business hemorrhaging cash, Ryan started tapping into my parents' personal finances. First came short-term loans from their retirement accounts, then mortgaging the family home that had been paid off for years. Finally, liquidating their investment accounts, which were supposed to fund their retirement. By the 18-month mark, my parents' comfortable retirement had transformed into a full-blown financial nightmare. The company was operating at a significant monthly loss. Their personal savings were gone. The family home, once a symbol of success, now had a massive mortgage they couldn't afford. Dad, who planned to golf his days away, was back on job sites at 68, trying to salvage troubled projects. Former colleagues told me he'd aged 10 years in 18 months, his confident stride replaced by a worried shuffle. My mother developed anxiety-related health issues, high blood pressure, insomnia. The stress was eating her alive. Ryan, meanwhile, remained in complete denial. He blamed the economy, disloyal employees, and demanding clients for the company's problems. He refused to acknowledge his role in this disaster, continuing to draw his executive salary even as the company fell behind on payroll for regular employees. The final straw came when the bank called the company's line of credit due to multiple covenant violations. With no cash to pay it off and no assets left to pledge, Patterson Construction faced imminent bankruptcy. The business my grandfather started from nothing, that my father built into a powerhouse, and that I helped modernize, was weeks away from total collapse. That's when my phone lit up. A text from my mother. Mortgage is due. Can we talk? It was 7:13 a.m. on a Tuesday. Mortgage is due. Can we talk? My first instinct? To ignore it. I hadn't heard from her in almost 2 years, beyond generic Christmas cards and birthday texts. But curiosity gnawed at me. What did mortgage is due even mean? The family home had been paid off for over a decade. I responded with a single question mark. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Her reply. Finally, we had to take out a mortgage to help the company. We can't make this month's payment. I put my phone down and went through my morning routine. Coffee, shower, professional attire. The familiar rhythm helped me process this unexpected intrusion. By the time I reached my office, 3 more texts had arrived. Please, Megan, we're in trouble. Ryan says it's temporary. Your father won't admit it, but we need help. I muted the conversation. My business was thriving precisely because I maintained professional boundaries and focused on solutions, not drama. My family's financial problems were not my emergency. But as the day dragged on, the texts kept coming. By afternoon, even my father had messaged, "We need to talk. Business matter." Coming from a man who had effectively disowned me from the family business, the irony was almost laughable. After my last meeting, I sat in my office, looking out over the Chicago skyline, and thought about my options. I could keep ignoring them, which would be totally justified given our history. I could send money, which would enable their dysfunction without addressing the root issues. Or I could engage, but on my terms, with clear boundaries. I chose the third option, not out of some sudden family obligation, but pure professional curiosity. How bad had things really gotten? I called my mother at exactly 5:30 p.m. She answered on the first ring. "Megan, thank God. I've been waiting all day." "I had meetings," I said neutrally. "What's going on with the mortgage?" What followed was a 20-minute monologue of financial disaster. The house had been mortgaged to secure a business loan after the company's credit was downgraded. That loan? It was used to cover losses on 3 major projects Ryan had totally underbid. The monthly payment was $4,300, a substantial amount for a couple whose retirement income had been decimated by Ryan's business loans from their personal accounts. "We're 3 months behind," Mom admitted. "The bank called yesterday. They're starting foreclosure proceedings next week if we don't catch up." "Where's Ryan in all this?" I asked. A pause. "He's trying his best," she said, completely unconvincingly. "The market is challenging right now." "Mom," I cut her off. "I work in the same industry.